Greetings, everyone. This is Donna Watson, and we have another great Lunch and Learn for you today. Nicholas Eden Walker is going to present an introduction to Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So without further ado, Nicholas, take it away. Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, a little bit of background. I went away a couple weeks ago to do some immersion training with Pivotal Cloud Foundry with the Pivotal Academy team. We went over kind of DevOps stuff and not so much developer stuff, but we kind of looked at what it would be to deploy apps in this kind of platform. And so, being a developer, I kind of went off after that and then just played around and saw what I could do and how I could do it. So, so this is definitely from the developer's point of view. There's an intention to kind of give more of these kind of things from other points of view at later dates. So let's go ahead. I'm assuming most people don't know too much about Cloud Foundry in general. It's been around for 4 or 5 years maybe, but it's really only started to pick up in the last year or two. So Cloud Foundry is open source. And there's a foundation. There's a Cloud Foundry Foundation that's being created. And so the idea is that well, we need a platform for the cloud. And so Cloud Foundry is one way of providing that kind of platform. And basically, it's connecting developers and all the different frameworks they're using with the underlying cloud provider underneath, like AWS or Microsoft Azure. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in between, and there's a lot of nitty-gritty, and there's a lot of different things that need to be working right. And I think a lot of us have experience running through the gauntlet of trying to make things work from code to deployment. And so the CEO of the Cloud Foundry Foundation has this haiku. Here is my source code. Run it in the cloud for me. I do not care how. And so there's an attempt to kind of make the simplicity of git push into something like CF push, which is basically what we're going to see. So then what's Pivotal Cloud Foundry? Pivotal Cloud Foundry is taking Cloud Foundry, the open source components, and making it enterprise grade and providing support and adding in a bunch of services that can be plugged into the platform so that developers can make use of. So for instance, when I sit down to make an application that uses a MySQL database, instead of provisioning a MySQL instance on my own personal laptop by going to a web page and then downloading MySQL and installing it, or resurrecting some installation I had from months ago, and then needing to then do that in other environments, the idea is that instead MySQL could be provided as a service that I just provision it from the platform that I'm using, and in this case, Cloud Foundry. So this is kind of a pictorial look of what we're talking about here. Along the top, we've got the application framework. This is things that we're used to. So the idea being that it's a polyglot situation. We got Java, we got Python, PHP, Go, even .NET. .NET code will run in this platform. And then at the bottom, we got the infrastructure. We got AWS, Microsoft Azure, OpenStack. It doesn't matter. And in how the haiku goes, it shouldn't matter. It definitely shouldn't matter to the developer. And so what's put in between is the runtime platform and automation for connecting it to the infrastructure. And so Cloud Foundry has this thing called BOSH, which is I guess it's newer. They tried to do a lot of things using Ansible and all the different kind of scripting languages that are used in the DevOps world. And in the end, they kind of came to this other technology that they've created called BOSH, which does things differently. But essentially, you model how you want everything to be and then Bosch does everything in its power to maintain that state at all times. And if things go down, it just creates new instances, and so it's an adequate automation tool for keeping an infrastructure created and in place. And so in this case, it's used to deploy Pivotal Cloud Foundry, and then all the different services like MySQL or anything else are also deployed using the Bosch tool. So next, this is kind of a look into we're looking at the left here, what Cloud Foundry is. And I see it I look at it in terms of like the metaphor of a warehouse. It's taking everything that is needed in terms of application development and deployment and ensuring that all these things work and run correctly. And even in a production, this would be a production environment. It's putting everything into a kind of a closed, isolated area like a warehouse where everything can be tuned and connected to each other in a much more seamless way. And so along the top, there's the PCF services, and that's things like, we have MySQL databases, we have Cassandra databases. We're going to treat those, we're going to call them services, and they can be provisioned to applications to use. And then we've got the PCF components, which are all the components for making the whole thing work and run. And then we've got this elastic area, runtime area, where all of the applications will be deployed into. And there's all these machines in place for being able to properly allocate them into correct places where there's space for them, and then when things go down, ensuring that they just get recreated. When things need to be scaled up or down, they get scaled up or down, all that kind of stuff. On the right is PCF Dev. It's basically a local version of this platform. To give you some context, to set up a Cloud Foundry or Pivotal Cloud Foundry platform, it takes upwards of 30 AWS instances to create. Most of them micro, but a few of them are definitely in the MX large kind of range. So we're talking about hundreds of dollars a month, maybe over 1,000. That's pretty beefy, pretty intensive. Not a working environment, particularly for people to try it out or to work remotely from home, from offline kind of thing. So PCF Dev is a local virtual machine that's created in a virtual box, which has all the components, the basic components, but on a condensed level. It only allows a certain number of apps in there, and it's got some basic services that you can connect to. And in this case, they're continuously evolving PCF Dev, but for the moment they've got Redis, RabbitMQ, and MySQL. A couple versions ago, they started adding in Spring Cloud Services, which is Spring's version of incorporating Eureka, Hystrix, and a configuration server into the Spring environment. Moving on. So we're going to go through a demonstration. I'm also going to do a quick time check. Okay. And so this is kind of what we're going to go through. Just show logging into PCF Dev, which would be kind of like logging into a distributed PCF platform. And then we're just going to deploy some applications. In this case, we're going to deploy a PHP app and then a Java app. But you could also do Node.js or even .NET. The way this is done is through what's called build packs. It's essentially a Git repo that handles all of the building and compiling and deploying of a particular language framework. And so, for instance, with PHP, there's no compiling that's handled, but it does some things. And similarly, Java, there's commands that are run to deploy a Java application to bundle it up. And so these are all encapsulated per framework in the build packs. And so what happens when you deploy an application to Cloud Foundry is your source code gets uploaded. Some checks are done to see what kind of a framework it is. Takes the correct build pack, and then it creates what's called a droplet. And that's essentially the combination of those two things. The droplet being an image for your app that can be more easily be deployed quickly to, rejuvenate, recreate an instance, or to respond to actually scaling up, that kind of thing. And then we'll also look at how you get your logs. You can easily tail logs for your apps that are in Cloud Foundry. And then we'll also talk about the manifests, which are essentially taking what you would put on the command line and putting it into a YAML file so you don't have to type it out all the time. Then we'll go over a service. In this case, it would be MySQL. How do you provision a service? And then how do you connect your application to use that service? And then we'll take a quick look at Eureka if there's time. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to, I've got a Git repo here. Sorry, I've got I've made available a link to all these private repos that I made in the Kenzan Bitbucket account. It should be on the Lunch and Learn page. So we're just going to go through this thing here. I have a link here for how to running through the install for this. If you want to look at it, you can do that later. So the idea is that I have a directory here, and I'm going to switch over into a directory I have called CF-PHP example. And in this directory, I basically just have an index.php file. And if we look at it, it's totally simple. It's just an HTML with some PHP in it. We'll ignore the manifest for now. Basically, what you can do here is that if I'm logged into Cloud Foundry, which I am, I'm a particular user, and I'm in a particular organization, and I'm in a particular space. A space could be like development or QA or production. Organization would be, something like Kenzan. And then, of course, we all have different users. So when I'm in here, I can do something like CF apps, and it shows me all the applications that I have for my user. I think I'm going to log back in. I need to close some things. I had Docker running. I'm going to have to kill that. So just to give you some, because I mentioned that there's a lot of intensity to running Cloud Foundry, this local instance is also quite intensive in use. It uses upwards of 14, I'll do something different. It uses upwards of, I'm just going to recreate the VPM. It uses upwards of 14 gigabytes of RAM. So I have 16 gigs on this laptop. I'm assuming most people have 16 gigs. So that's definitely something to be aware of. So for instance, if you see on the screen here, it's allocating 8 gigabytes of the total RAM. 4 of it is for the CF dev in general, and then there's another 4 that are being allocated for the cloud services, which is what this FCS is that I added into the command prompt there. So it's going to take a few moments actually to load up. So I'm going to switch over back over to here. So for people to look at later, I've kind of set up the readmes in each of these repositories to give a sense of the commands that you can run. So for instance, I was just trying to run the CF apps, and basically what it does is it just shows what applications are currently running in your Cloud Foundry space. In this case, it'll say no apps because I haven't pushed anything. And then when you push an app, you basically just say CF push, and then you specify the name of the app that you want to, the name of the app you want to call it. This doesn't necessarily have to be the name of the app. It could be anything else. But in this case, I'm entering it as the name of the repository. I mentioned manifest. In this case, I entered this because I wanted it to do it without the manifest. Since we have a moment, I'm going to talk about the manifest. The manifest file is just in the root of that same project, and it basically just specifies the same kind of things that you could put on the command line. So the name of the application. You can specify the amount of RAM and memory to use. You can specify the number of instances. And in this case, I'm specifying that because it is, I know it's a PHP project, I'm telling it use the PHP build pack. If I didn't do that, then it would actually iterate through and check all of them as it uploads. And then of course if it doesn't find one, then it just spells out. I'm going to basically I'm just going to run through. We're almost there. It takes a bit of time to run up the VM. I thought I had it started. I guess I did not. I guess we could take a moment if anybody has any questions.
Hey, Nicholas, this is Owen. Can you hear me?
Hey, Owen.
I was just curious where something like Cloud Foundry or Bosch fit in with other tools and services like maybe Spinnaker or Elastic Beanstalk or maybe even Docker.
Yeah. So from what I can tell, it seems that Elastic Beanstalk is doing something similar. Spinnaker is doing things a little bit is different. Yeah. I mean, you can. There's a member of the Spinnaker team at Pivotal who's actually deploying Spinnaker into Cloud Foundry to look at it and to try it out there. And it seems that part of the cycle that the people at Pivotal use is they have a CI that they use called Concourse, and it does all the job work and then deploys into Cloud Foundry. And so there are two parts of it, and it seems more like Spinnaker would be more related to that part, whereas also Spinnaker is a lot more, it's got a lot more going on. It does a lot more. Yeah, I mean, there's some overlap. They're not the same. And then the other you said was Docker. Yes, so I think I haven't done too much. I've learned a bit lately, just kind of delving into Docker, and I think it'd be more like Docker with Kubernetes. Might be getting a little bit more similar. Cloud Foundry seems to be much more of a overall platform that provides a lot of what the other things like Docker are producing. Now you can use Docker with Cloud Foundry as well. So I think I'm gonna probably stop myself from speaking at that point. I don't know enough about each of the things to say, but that's just a bit. There's definitely, I would say that there's definitely a lot of work being done by different groups that are looking to solve the similar kind of issues that we have in doing development and trying to and have continuous deployment. So there's a lot of different pieces that are being done.
Cool, thanks. And then as far as, so you say that, or rather that the tool works from pulling source code down. So then are those YAML files or whatever scripting your build, like they'll run an npm install, an npm run, or composer install, or maven install, those kind of things as part of the build lifecycle? Or how does, and like how would this fit in with continuous integration or whatnot?
So GitHub, Cloud Foundry, build packs. So these are all open source. And so they've got, the Cloud Foundry Java build pack, for instance, PHP build pack, .NET build pack. So these things are all available to look at to see what it is that they do. And so, for instance, the Java build pack. So they're all written in Ruby. So there's some uphill in terms of understanding what's going on there. I want to see actually the Node one. That one actually, I looked at more than the others. think maybe we'll have to do this offline. Where is? Yeah, well, let's go back to the PHP one. That was pretty simple. I can hear Kevin laughing in the other room.
So can I, and I'm on the other side of the building.
So I think it's the release Python script. Maybe not. Anyways, the build packs are available in Cloud Foundry. They got dash build pack, I think. So we can look through those. There's the Node.js one there. So they come from Heroku. If people are familiar with Heroku, this is where a lot of the stuff has come from. So they've got instructions here for how these build packs work, and companies can make their own build packs and change them and use different ones.
That's cool. Similar to like a base box, like if you're using Vagrant or Docker or something like that, and then you can just script what else you need on top of it.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I haven't done anything like that, but that sounds plausible.
Yeah, with some of my Vagrant stuff, I've done. I'll just get like a vanilla Ubuntu box and then just have Vagrant run a shell script that I write, and then that's just basically just like npm install, or maybe it'll like sudo apt-get like curl or some other libraries and just run from there. But there are also lots of pre-configured ones that already have npm or PHP 7 or Composer, all that stuff set up for you. So that's pretty cool.
So my activity monitor at this point, it's up at over 14 gigs, so it's definitely mostly running. This should start up very soon. Sorry for this. Just gonna see where it's at. I'd be looking at chat messages while we're on this. Food jeans.
That was a chat message from me.
Turn off social media. Yeah. I hope this is actually in a good state. It says being valid. I'll give this another minute before I want to try it again. I think I might just have to actually just talk through a lot of this then. Do I have? No. Well, let me just skip over. Let me move on to the next one. Now, this is a Java app. It's just something I threw together using that's set up using Hibernate and MySQL. And so in the same case, we just push an app. Sorry, Hibernate, SQL, different project. I'm gonna switch to it. That's the basic one. Here's the MySQL one. So I'm going to start talking through this. Quick check to see if this is good. I'm going to actually cancel this out. dfdev destroy. So I'm just going to destroy the VM. And I'm going to just start up normally without the cloud services. And we'll see where we get. It'll probably come up faster. So in this example, what I did is I created a Java project, Spring Boot project, and I added in a MySQL connector, an H2 for Hibernate. That's an in-memory database, basically to be used while I'm on development machine, and made just a basic web app. And so you create the deployment package. If we were to run it and we were to check the health for it, it would show that the H2 database is being used. If we then push this app up to Cloud Foundry and do the same thing and check the health for this application once it started, it would also say H2. And the reason for this is that the Cloud Foundry environment doesn't actually know doesn't really know anything about MySQL and how you would use it or how to connect to it. All I've done is added it to my POM, and there's no information about how, connection string info, anything like that. So what you do when you want to actually use the MySQL database is that you have services available to you, and these are service instances. And when we run this on the system, it'll say no services. So what we want to do is we want to actually provision a service to use. And so what will happen is a Cloud Foundry platform will be set up, and then if there are particular services like MySQL that we want to use, within the whole organization, then MySQL would be provisioned into the environment, and then users could be given quotas to be able to request spot instances of MySQL, an instance of MySQL database. And so the model is that things are provisioned, and then developers can freely self-serve themselves in terms of getting things they might need. And I'm talking about MySQL a lot, but it could be anything. It could be an Apogee router. It could be a Eureka registry. It could be a config server. Any kind of things can be created into services. And at this point, there's a lot of external companies out there that are creating their integrations for making their products available within Cloud Foundry as services. So then all the companies in-house will be able to provision their platforms with these available services, and then pick and choose how many they want to or how much they want to spend per month on, for instance, the MySQL database system. And so then every user, every developer, if they need to just start up, they just need the MySQL instance instead of setting up locally and connecting to it that way, they would just create it in their Cloud Foundry environment. And so the way you do that is you check the marketplace, and then if we check the marketplace, we would see that there's a bunch of services listed, and we're about to get there, so I can show you what it looks like. And then what you would do is you would actually create a service. You would say, I want to create a MySQL instance for myself to use. So I would specify the name of the service, and they come with plans. And so there's a few free plans in the case of MySQL, and then there's paid plans that are obviously have a lot more to them. And then you give it a name. And then what happens is you get an instance of MySQL set up for your usage. And if we did the CF services at that point, it would list out the service that we created. So then what happens is you have a MySQL instance there, and you have your app that's there, and you do what's called, you bind them. You bind the application to the service that you've created. And what the binding does is it actually creates environment variables for the application. And in those environment variables, it'll list all of the things like the connection info and the credentials for actually connecting to that instance and whatever the database is called on that instance. It's done transparently, so you don't even need to know what the values are. There's no need to provide them in a config server to ensure that they're available when running in production. They're already there in the environment variables. So they're kind of nicely tucked away and secured and kept. And if you were to unbind the service and then rebind it again, it would just regenerate new credentials, and it would create the connection string again. It's really, in my mind, kind of elegant way of working with it. So in this case, once we did the binding, then if we re-staged the app and started up again, the database would then actually say MySQL, because at that point, Cloud Foundry knows that you have MySQL connector on your POM, on your class path, and you have connection string info in the environment variables, and so it understands that you want to use MySQL at that point. So that's what that example runs through. We're going to look to the service registry now for Eureka. So Spring Boot, the Spring team has been working at creating. They basically said, well, you know, Eureka and an idea of a configuration server, they don't need to be applications that are created everywhere. They can just be runtime services. And so they created a service registry like Eureka that is available in the marketplace. And so you create it in the same way that you created the SQL service and give it a plan. And then the same thing, if you were to create an application, and in this case, we've got an application that is going to be discoverable. And so on the class path, it has the POM entry for the service registry. And in the case of Spring Boot, they make it very easy. All you have to do is you have to throw an annotation onto the main method saying enable discovery client. And that does everything to reach out and talk to Eureka and tell it that it's available. And then similarly, if you then incorporated Hystrix in, you could have Hystrix commands then you could incorporate. I'm thinking about ribbon. Sorry. If you incorporate ribbon stuff, then it would use this information from Eureka. Then you would it all just like wraps up and works nicely. But we're going to see here. Oh, okay, I'm going to switch over to this stuff now. So we're actually in the Cloud Foundry environment now. So what we need to do is we need to log in. I think I have that on the install page. I can get it also possibly that way. That's the way I can do it. So what I wanted to do is cf login a, and then I need to, I think I need to skip SSL as well for dev environment. So we have a base user and a password. So now I'm in this space, and if I do CF apps, I don't have anything. I'm in my CF PHP example, so I'm going to do a CF push, and I'm just going to use the manifest this time. So if I do a CF push, it does basically everything I said before. It's creating the application in the environment. It actually creates a route and then it binds it to the application so that you could just go to that directly. It binds the route to the app. It uploads the project. In the case of a PHP project, when you don't specify a compiled package, it just uploads everything that's at the root of the directory you pushed from. So in this case, all we had was an index.php file. If we didn't specify PHP build pack, then it would run through and it would find, oh, you have an index.php file. This is a PHP project. We'll use that build pack. So it went through and it got the build pack, created a container. It ran the build pack against your file, and then it uploaded. And then at this point, we see at the bottom we've got one app running. And so if we go to this particular URL, we will see hello world. And if we now switch out and go to CF Spring, this is a Spring example that I have, and I'm just going to compile the package and just do the same thing. I'm going to say CF push for this app, and it just runs through and does the same thing. It uploads this application. It's a different app. It's using a different framework. It doesn't matter. It handles that. It deploys it. And then we'll also find that the app is there. If I go back over to here, I'm just going to do CF apps over here. So we've got a listing. Here's the app we've already pushed. Here's one that's currently being pushed. we've got this ability to just, throw up a bunch of apps and know which ones are there. It's going. While it's going, I'm going to do the services now. So no services found. Let's do that marketplace. And so since I didn't include the cloud services, we've just got these basic ones here. And so that's how it looks. And basically, DevOps would provision these things for users to use. And so let's create a service like we said we're going to do. Create service. And let's make the MySQL one. And we're going to make the 512 megabyte plan. And let's just call it, well, I wanted to use it for CF MySQL example DB is what I called it in the other case. So if I have services now, I have that service available to me. So now if I go to that MySQL example, and I also build this one. While I build it, I'm going to come back over to here and show, well, now we have the app up and running for Spring Boot example. And if we go look at it, sure enough, it'll be deployed as well and live and working. Or not. Oh, yes. It doesn't actually have a root health link, though, and it's up, and some information about it. So coming back over to here, we built this one. It's actually, let me move this up. That's better. Let's push this app now. So it's doing the same thing that it just did on the other basic Spring app, except this one's got the Hibernate and the MySQL packages in the class path. As I mentioned before, it's going to show that it's still just using the Hibernate database when it's deployed, and I'll show that it's also on the health link. Taking a moment. What I found interesting about a lot of this is that I had an issue where I had deployed an application and it would receive requests once it was up, and then after one or two requests it would crash. I couldn't quite figure out what was wrong with the app, and then I checked and I saw that the memory usage was actually maxed out. I'd brought all the instances down to like 256 megabytes of RAM, and it was maxed out. And for me as a developer, I had never really spent much time contemplating how much memory usage my applications have used, and it was one of the first times that it just was like, in my face that this was the problem, and I changed the usage, and all of a sudden the app started working, and I thought it's interesting that as an application developer, this kind of operation stuff is now in my face and is now part of my environment. It's something that I actually have to consider. I think it's a good thing to have that operation level stuff. Even just that basic stuff. I'm sure there's the ability to get into more of it. That's an aside. So we have deployed this application, and we're going to go to the health link, and you'll see that it's running MySQL. And the reason for that is we go to CF environment, CF MySQL example. These are the environment variables for this application. And we've got here VCAP services. This has in it the JDBC URL, and it's created, a name and a password, a username and password for interacting with it. It even has, I've actually never tried to go to this URL, but I wonder if it shows anything. No. But if I were to, for instance, do a CF unbind service.
What if you tried it on port 3306?
Yeah, probably then it'll connect, right?
But I guess as you using MySQL Workbench, you'd probably be able to connect to it.
Yeah. Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, the instance is there, it's available. There's nothing too mysterious about it. So what I want to do here is I want to take this guy, I want to unbind this service, app instance service. Okay, so I need to unbind app name and then service name. So I'm unbinding the service from that application. So now if I do CF environment, CF MySQL, I don't have that services area anymore. I don't have the VCAP services. And if I were to, I have to restage, CF restage. I think if I were to refresh down, it's restarting here, being restaged. What we'll find is that at that point, it won't be MySQL anymore. It'll be back to using H2. But I wanted to show there that this is the way, it's a different way of thinking about, provisioning what you're doing. I mean, the way we're used to is, okay, you're gonna do something as a developer. You need to set up on your system all of the local all the local things you need, like MySQL or Cassandra, and you configure it. You're not quite sure if you're configuring it the same way it's configured in other environments, and all these things, and it just becomes something that's a little bit beyond what we really need to be doing. And it's not focused on the actual application coding part that we should be focused on. So it's nice to see that a lot of that stuff kind of gets abstracted out. Now we're back to H2. So that's just basically showing the environment variables and how those things are done and how the service is wired together for it. I can't show you the Eureka one. I could if I went through the whole dev destroy thing, which I'm going to do. And I'm going to start off with the other one. I'm going to switch us back to questions, see if anybody has anything. And I'll start this back up, and maybe we can see it once it's started up. -S, yes. So does anybody have any questions at this point? Owen? Or anybody else?
Hey. I have a question. So is this Pivotal Cloud Foundry, is this a web service, or do you run it on like a server in your office or something?
So it can be both, actually. Yeah. Sorry, first question. Who is this speaking?
This is Nicholas Lejanowski.
Hello. I think you're called Sledge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is something that you would run in a cloud environment. So you would have your own AWS account, and you could then deploy to Cloud Foundry. We could just say it's Cloud Foundry into AWS. Similarly, you could deploy it into Microsoft Azure, VM. If you have a vSphere kind of thing. So anything like that. I'm assuming you could do all this on premises, but I'm not sure that that's the goal. But also what they've done is they've created something called Pivotal Web Services, and they've hosted a Pivotal Cloud Foundry environment for anyone to use, and so it is a web service. It would be, I think it's a viable place to, play around in. And just throw up apps and see how they work, and then probably get some proof of concept things going. Taking it to like a really industry standard, then you really have to take it into your own environment at that point, and then have people that are provisioning it. This particular web environment only has specific services available, so you can't quite extend it as much as others. How's that?
That's good.
Yeah, in my own kind of, so as I was learning this stuff, I mean, I wanted to cut my teeth on it. I wanted to be able to play around with it, and I was looking at, oh, okay, well, I have my own personal AWS account. Why don't I just set this up and then play around with it? And, that's when I encountered that it was going to cost, hundreds of dollars, if not more, just to have it running. That's not even with any applications deployed in it. And so, yeah, I mean, this really is a big thing, really on much more on an industry, corporation size. It really does scale really well. But they have they have the PCF dev. If you want to play around with it and actually do that, then I'd suggest looking up PCF dev. You can also install you can install locally using Bosch a Cloud Foundry environment, and I've done that as well to kind of play around with it. It's kind of in between. It's closer to what an actual Cloud Foundry release is, but it's got more than what the PCF dev does. Anyone else with a question?
This is Colin.
Colin?
It seemed like you could bind one of your apps to one of the Cloud Foundry's kind of managed services like MySQL, and you ran that command to bind the app to the MySQL. But you can like put that in a configuration file and just have it automatically. So like when you press deploy, it automatically binds the app to the database.
Yeah, so that actually happened, and it surprised me for a moment, and then I realized what had happened. And yes, when I deployed that MySQL app, MySQL example, I deployed it using the manifest file, and then when I went to the health check, it said it was using the MySQL thing. It's because that's actually what happens, is in the manifest, you can specify the services that you want this thing to bind to. And as long as those services are created already, then it will bind to them. So yes, I find the manifest to be quite nice in that regard.
And then that binding is only for their managed services. So like you can't really bind one of your own apps to another one of your own apps. Like that you're on your own as far as doing that. Like you have to use if you set up Eureka or something.
So,
or do they they help you out with that?
So there's a couple things, I guess, right? I mean, in the case of something like Eureka, you're going to want to have one instance of Eureka, and then you're going to want to have all of your apps. If you have 3 apps, you're going to want them all to register with Eureka. So they're all going to bind with your Eureka instance at that point. Now, you're also wanting to develop this stuff probably in isolation from other developers. So it's probably best that you have your own instance of Eureka and others have their own instance of Eureka. And so then when these apps then, move up into other spaces, then, they would do the same thing. They would bind to the Eureka that's there instead of yours or anything like that. Now, the other part of this is that, and I didn't really touch on this at all, was that, for applications to work in this environment, they need to be 12-factor apps. They need to be cloud native. And that's probably one of the biggest things that came up at the conference that I was at was all these companies, these really large companies, are now understanding that they need to move their technology teams to using something like Cloud Foundry. because it'll help accelerate their time to market for development releases. And so they're all now running around thinking, oh my God, how do I make my monolith cloud native? And so that seems to be the biggest thing now is that, I mean, yeah, you could get Cloud Foundry and you could set it up, and the best thing to do at that point is only use it for greenfield apps, and then maybe get into refactoring or using new work for your monolith and doing it in Cloud Foundry instead, and then start, taking your monolith and breaking it out and making those services with Cloud Foundry. The industry isn't quite ready for this stuff yet. There's a lot of work to be done to make monoliths cloud native and then enable them to be able to make use of this kind of thing. That's the two things that I thought of with your question.
Yeah, but I guess when it binds to Eureka, it's not binding in the Cloud Foundry sense. It's just it's like working like Eureka does in our own, like our current environment. It just so it's kind of do it yourself. This as far as like, service discovery.
Right. I mean, it's got its own. Where did I have it in the store? No, it's going to be over here. And like the instance of Eureka that I created is only available to me in my domain. I'm looking for this one, and so when I created this service, it has. I'll have to do it to show it, but basically, the instance of Eureka in this case is going to be similar to how the MySQL one is. It has its own domain, and so it is isolated to my environment only. I think I lost track of what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time. Oh, but it seems like you're binding to Eureka.
Yeah.
But Eureka's there. Cloud Foundry provides that Eureka, right?
And the binding, as far as I know, is just putting connection details into the environment variables. And so there's nothing mysterious about binding. It's just making an application know that this other service is available and telling it this is how to connect to it. Yeah. So then when you move that, when that application is then deployed into another space, let's say into QA space, the connection details would be completely different, and we wouldn't even know the domain. They may even call the Eureka service a completely different name, and that's actually where these manifest files start to break down. Is that if you're not actually using the same nomenclature for naming things in all environments, then you're not gonna, the manifest isn't gonna connect to the right service. It's gonna be named differently. But I mean, the idea being that every environment or space at that point owns its own destiny, and it will handle what it needs to do to connect to the right things with the right information. So developers don't have to worry about it, right? They just say, "Oh, make this Eureka aware." Okay, it's Eureka aware. That's it. There's no configuration really. So we're down to the last 5 minutes. Donna, do we do anything special in the last 5 minutes?
No, other than ask for any remaining questions, and that would pretty much wrap us up. Does anybody else have any questions?
This is Scott. Just got one question.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, how does autoscaling work? I saw that you set an instance of one, but behind the scenes, if you're on Amazon or Azure, you want the app to... Sorry, autoscaling. So if you want to have the app scale with on Amazon or Azure, how's that look like?
Yeah, so it uses different scaling than it doesn't make you. So for instance, if you're on AWS, it doesn't make use of the AWS autoscaling groups. It has built in its own scaling mechanism, and this thing's still starting up, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show it, but it's as simple as typing in a command like cf CF scale, app name, and then you can give it parameters like 2, 3, number of instances you want. Press enter, and then it just does it. It does the work for you. There's even a GUI. Actually, I never even showed it, but I think I have to share my screen. But there's a GUI as well for all of these pages. And I'm going to switch over to the PWS. I created something over here. So this is the Pivotal. This is the web service, the one that they provide. And so they've got up here the ability to go into here. So this is the web UI for all the things we were looking at, right? Except it's for a different domain. And so I've got a development space. I was trying out Spinnaker in here, so I've got that there. But I've got an app in here. Oh, that was the deployer app. And so, I mean, I could go here, and I've got scaling. I could just change this number, right? And then hit scale app, and then it'll do it. It doesn't use it does it intrinsically to Cloud Foundry. It doesn't make use of the underlying provider, as far as I know.
Cool, thanks.
What I think is cool about this is that it just takes a little bit more legwork to actually try out what scaling does to an application locally. Whereas this makes it simple. You can do a lot more things locally to ensure that the thing's going to work in higher environments, which I think is cool. And why not, right? This VM is a cloud environment. You're deliberately creating a cloud environment on your local system that you can interact and develop your app, so that, of course, it's going to work when you push it into the cloud because it's already been developed in the cloud. I think we've come to the end.
All right. Well, Nicholas, that was a great job. Thank you very much. Any last-minute questions before we end? All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Appreciate your attendance today. And the recording will be out on the wiki shortly. Thank you.